Okay, so in this video, I want to talk to you guys about how we took a sales team that was for about the last trailing 12 months closing at about 19%, and we got them up to about 42% last month after implementing 3 big shifts. Okay, we're going to go through exactly why we made each of those 3 shifts, what that ultimately yielded in terms of revenue for the business, and how you guys can implement it in your business as well. If you're new to this channel, if you guys don't know me, my name is Sam Sauter. I've managed millions of dollars profitably in paid advertising spend. I've consulted 7, 8, and even multi 9-figure a year businesses on managing their paid advertising, CRM build out, sales team management. We've had the privilege now of working with some of the biggest personal brands in the space, some of the biggest financial service companies, pretty much from about 20 different industries now at this point. So with all that being said, now let's talk about the first change that we made, which was we consolidated the sales team staff. Now this business was basically having 5 people throughout the company haphazardly taking sales calls whenever they were available. And the founder by far had the highest closing percentage. And then there were kind of 4 people that were just kind of closing at a very low percentage. I don't think they were the best salespeople, but it definitely wasn't helping the fact is that they weren't getting a lot of opportunities. What you'll find is that any peak performance athletes or salespeople, if you can have somebody taking a lot of calls, they kind of get into a flow. They get into a rhythm very, very quickly. And if you're just giving somebody a couple calls, right when they start to get into the rhythm, they might not see a new call on their calendar, depending on your lead volume, a couple days or something like that. So that was happening in this business. There wasn't a devoted salesperson who was accustomed to taking these calls. From a traffic side of things, from a lead generation standpoint, I knew that I could double, triple, quadruple the lead volume with no change in cost. So what we did is we actually said, okay, all of you guys that are not the founder are kind of out of KPI. You're not really hitting your numbers. I recruited a sales rep from a previous offer that I had worked with in the past. I brought her in-house. We ramped her up in a period of 30 days. And her only daily responsibility was to handle these sales calls. The founder took a couple when it was a bigger opportunity and when he was available. But she was only the one responsible for taking sales calls. She was allowed to be specialized. And then the rest of the team was now fully focused on operations instead of wearing both hats. And I knew that based on the acquisition channel that we were building, we were going to be onboarding about 10 to 12 new clients every single month based on my projections. Having those people, having those operational people now freed up from sales allowed them to be prepared for the challenges and the stress that was going to come as a result of increased customer acquisition. So basically we specialized those 2 roles, consolidated the sales team, and we just had 2 people now taking calls. This particular sales rep needed about a 7 to 10 day ramp up. We had, luckily up to this point, we had documented all of the numbers of the prior sales team. When I came into the business, they weren't tracking their numbers at all. So I knew their close rates, I knew their shows rates, I knew their average cash collected, and they had tons of sales call recordings and over about 100 documented sales call closes. So luckily, she kind of went on kind of a sales call binging spree where she watched all those sales calls, and within a 7 to 10 day time horizon, she actually closed her 4th call that she took. And then after a period of 2 to 3 weeks, she was actually far surpassing the KPIs of the employees that were kind of wearing both hats who had been with the company for 3 to 5 years prior. Okay, so now that we have the sales team consolidated, we had a proper staff of people that were equipped to handling these leads. People weren't task switching. People were able to be very specialized and very focused on one particular skill set. I started to think about how can I leverage the existing sales team skill set to the greatest degree possible? How can I increase their closing percentage to the highest degree possible? The way that we are typically doing that to help them and aid that sales team is we are trying to increase the amount of content consumption of somebody prior to a sales call. If you're somebody that's not super familiar with internet marketing, you know that it's a massive, massive deal to speak with somebody who's completely cold, a stranger from the internet, versus somebody who's kind of maybe already know, like, and trust you and consumed 2 or 3 pieces of your content. They kind of show up to that call on the 80-yard line as opposed to the 20-yard line. So very on in my kind of early internet marketing career, I used to get so excited when I'd say, oh my gosh, I'm getting a $50 cost per call or a $100 cost per call. But that's not super valuable to a business owner, especially if they're not a super incredible salesperson who's accustomed to selling to cold traffic. It's much better to pay maybe $200 or $300 for that same call if somebody had consumed 3 to 5 pieces of long form content. And most businesses haven't scaled. When I'm meeting them kind of at like right at their beginning of their journey, they're typically at 7 figures looking to scale to 8 figures. They've typically grown through referrals, word of mouth. They've grown organically. Organic traffic is going to react very, very differently from cold traffic. Cold traffic is quite literally just a name, phone number, and email address. It is a stranger on the internet. So businesses, when they're looking to scale with paid advertising spend, if there is not conscious effort placed on how we're going to increase the amount of content consumption in a very short window of time, from the time when the prospect books the call to the time when they arrive and show up on that sales call, it's going to be very, very challenging for them to be successful from a sales perspective. So what are tactically the ways that you can increase the amount of content consumption prior to a sales call? Well, you can embed these pieces of video content on your thank you page, on your video sales letter. You can send email email sequences, linking them to long form pieces of content. A lot of people are kind of obsessed, in my opinion, with kind of email follow-up and email nurture templates, which can add value. But if a picture is 1,000 words and a video is maybe worth 1,000,000 words, I think it makes more sense to send emails linking them to your long form video content. The last option that you have available to you is you can actually create a custom audience on Facebook of all the people that have a pending or upcoming call with your company, and you can run ads to have them consume this content prior to the sales call. What that looks like, if you're somebody who's a little bit more sophisticated with internet marketing, the way that looks is you're basically going to run a separate campaign. You're gonna have 12 pieces of content all in a separate ad set. Basically, every single time somebody opts in and books a call, they're gonna get added to a custom audience. They're then going to drop off and they're gonna get removed after the call has transpired. You're going to optimize the campaign for engagement, and you're going to make the audience for all the people that are on that ad set, all the people that are on that custom list, but you're going to exclude people who have already watched that piece of content. So if you have about 12 pieces of content there, then very quickly what's going to happen is you're going to notice the frequency gets very, very high on those ad sets, and each person is going to consume 12 pieces of content. They're very least going to be served that content on their newsfeed. There's a very, very high likelihood that they're going to consume that if the frequency is very, very high prior to that sales call. Now, the overall marketing spend per a qualified call is going to go up, but your closing rate will sometimes double or triple, and your sales team is just going to be able to scale much more effectively if people are showing up to that call kind of already on the 70 or 80 yard line. If things are just too challenging, then it's going to be very, very hard to scale. If for what it takes to make your acquisition profitable is that you, the founder, have to be there taking calls and you have to be hyped up and ready to go and on your A game, there's a very low likelihood that that's going to scale, because then you're going to hire a sales rep 12 to 18 months from now. Maybe you're going to have a sales team manager that's making hires on your behalf, and you're just going to see the level of sales talent just continue to dip, the overall profitability of the company dip. Like, it needs to be exorbitantly profitable if you, the founder, are selling. You're the best person at the company. There's no point in bringing on another sales rep. You haven't nailed the system yet if you're not at least closing at a very high percentage. There needs to be a big premium there between kind of your break-even return on advertising spend, because fundamentally, if you are only relying on your managing of sales talent, you're not tapping into the highest form of leverage, which is managing people that have feelings, emotions, slumps. Instead, if you can leverage something like content or media, you're in a sense, you're using the same type of leverage that is that of SaaS, or the reason why some of those people in the tech world have generated so much amount of wealth is because it's a much more effective form of leverage. If you can expend the one-time fixed cost to set up this system to where all of your sales reps then thereafter are speaking with prospects that have consumed a lot of content, you are now leveraging something that is much more leverageable than the labor of the sales talent, which requires tons of ongoing management. You're going to find that the bar to recruit, train, and hire and manage sales staff, because of this new marketing system that you've now developed, gets much, much lower, and you're going to be able to onboard, retain, and have salespeople hitting their KPIs much, much more quickly, because you've set up this infinitely more leverageable system that increases their likelihood of being successful. Okay, so now that we talked about the importance of increasing content consumption, how tactically we did that, the final and most important change that I think we made to improve the sales team's closing rate that actually had nothing to do with selling was we actually changed the targeting. Their existing campaigns that they were running, what we found is they were optimizing for only the lowest cost per qualified lead, which in the beginning is very, very important, and that's what you should be doing in the beginning. But what you find as time progresses is that you slowly want to optimize towards things that are more towards the end stage of a buyer's journey. So what do I mean by that? If you look at a buyer's journey, you start with leads. Even further than that, you start with clicks, then you go leads, then you go qualified sales calls, and then you go closes, and then you can all actually optimize even further down that, which is lifetime value, so reorders, orders on the back end. Let's just say you're optimizing for leads. Sometimes a very cheap lead might actually reduce in a higher cost per qualified call. And now you have to sort through all the junk of all the bad leads to find that call, so operationally it's harder on your sales team. Sometimes you'll find that particular campaigns produce a very low cost per qualified call, and they produce a very low cost to acquire the customer, but it attracts the wrong type of customers that are very low value. Basically, you spend 3 to 6 months advertising, and then you kind of do this meta-analysis of all of your campaigns. Hopefully you have a proper CRM established, and you can basically see the downstream consequences of a particular campaign. Ultimately, what you want to be doing is after a period of about 6 to 12 months, you want to be trying to optimize for what type of customers have the greatest discrepancy in LTV to CAC. LTV is the lifetime value of that customer. CAC is the cost to acquire that customer, and that discrepancy is one of the most important relationships in all of internet marketing. So we start by optimizing for cost per qualified lead. Then we start looking at CPA or cost per qualified call, things like that. And then ultimately, after time really progresses, we start really getting crystal clear on which customers bought the most from us. And then we go back to the marketing and we get really clear in our messaging, our targeting, and we only optimize around this particular type of customer. Familiar with Alex Hormozi? He'll even have, basically what he'll do is he'll create a one-page paper on all the things that the most valuable customers had in common. And then he starts stating that in the marketing messaging. And then he actually asks the sales team to not sell people if they don't match that ideal criteria. So we haven't reached that third tier yet, that third level of optimization. We're kind of still in this middle tier, which is we're optimizing for lowest cost to acquire the customer, lowest cost per call, which you could argue may not be correlated yet to those most highly valuable customers. And just to kind of elaborate further on this principle here, Facebook, they really understand what happens on their platform. So by default, it's only going to optimize towards cost per cheapest lead. But the problem with that is not all leads are created equally. It's going to default to the cheapest lead that it can possibly get. It will always try to optimize towards the cheapest cost for whatever thing that you tell it to optimize towards. We help them implement things like Hyros and these third-party tracking tools that basically now allow you to optimize towards things that are happen offline. So sales calls, conversions, things like that. And then we're able to feed that data back to Facebook to change how the algorithm is learning and optimizing. So that is basically it in a nutshell. If I had to summarize everything that we did with this business to, again, take their close rates from 19% to 42% in the last month, it would be three basic things. Is number one, we consolidated the sales team, tried to specialize their roles. Number two is we set up marketing systems to allow their sales team to consume more content prior to that sales call. And then number three is we started doing kind of a meta-analysis, a downstream analysis of certain particular campaigns. And we started optimizing towards what was producing us the lowest cost to acquire the customer and not just the cheapest leads that were available to us. Hopefully you found that valuable. If you or somebody you know would like us to do a free kind of consultation evaluation of your media buying, your CRM, or your sales and conversion process, all you need to do is fill out your information below. You'll be speaking with either myself or somebody on my team. We really look forward to hopefully working with you. That's pretty much it. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.